All right, so I'm gonna stop. All right, so here we go. Here we go. Here we go. All right, so man, it's a lot of work, a lot of preparation that goes through doing this. So anyway, I'm back with another installment, man. Ladies and gentlemen. Uh, and so I tried to put one on last night and I just couldn't get to it. So I went back, did a little preparation, switched some things around, and this is the title of this particular one. It's called AANA 12-Step Recovery Through the Application of 12-Step Principles, a Perspective from SUNI, Sami. Now, what's happening with this one is I want to connect this one to my light workers piece. And so what I did was I went back, I gave a little thought, and I want to go over addiction again. And I did a little switching around, adding, and I came up with this title because this title is actually the material I'm about to go over tonight is actually the basis of addiction. I mean, I'm ascribing addiction a little more that's geared to also, the newcomer seeking recovery, but also those are into what is termed today as light work, as light workers. So I didn't add light workers on because I didn't want to throw like the newcomer off. So I'm going to begin. And so how I'm approaching this particular title or this particular segment right here, I'm introducing trauma. I'm going straight there. I'm going to trauma, which is really what, when you look at it from this perspective that I'm looking at, is how many addictions are started. And so what I did was, in my description, I talked about trauma is the grounds for addiction. In other words, usually most people come into their addiction through some type of trauma. Now, there's 3 types of trauma. And then the first type of trauma is called acute trauma. And acute trauma is when a person, and I took some notes, so I ain't going off the top of my head. So acute trauma, this results in a single stressful or dangerous event in a person's life. So it's a single stressful event that happens in a person's life. So let's say a person could have been, they could have been molested, or they could have been deprived of food, or they could have been, and this is like one single event, they could have witnessed a murder. They could have been abandoned like just one time, but the abandonment was so severe that it left an imprint on them mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally. So it was like just one event, but that one event was so severe that it was so traumatic to the individual that it left an imprint on them mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally. And for the record, how I'm defining mentally, physically, spiritually, or the mental, the physical, and the spiritual aspect is, when I flip to that page, I'm saying the mental is the intellect, and the physical is the body, and the spiritual is your energy, and the emotional is your devotional. And coming from a recovery aspect, we're going to talk about those. Talk about those later, and why these particular definitions are used in this fashion. But right now, I'm gonna go ahead and move on and talk about the other aspects of trauma. Now, remember, when I'm talking about the complete makeup of the human being, I'm talking about mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional. And I'm also referring to, when I'm talking about those, it's like I said, the mental is the intellect, the physical is the body, the spiritual is your energy, and your emotional is your devotional. And those are the 4 areas that the addiction or the alcoholism affects a person. Now, next is the chronic. Back to the definitions I was going over with trauma. So, chronic, and this results from repeated and prolonged exposure to the same thing, a stressful or dangerous event, where acute is just something that happens and is over with. Chronic is prolonged. You know, it's prolonged hunger, prolonged rape over and over, incestuous events over and over and over, abandonment. Did I say abandonment? So being abandoned over and over and over to the individual. So where one is just a single event, acute is a single event, chronic is one event over and over and over and over again. So then we move on to the third one, complex trauma. Now, complex trauma is the same thing. It's a stressful or dangerous event. But here's the deal. Here's the difference with complex. In complex trauma, what has happened is a person experienced one or more of a serious or stressful event at the same time. At the same time. So a person, they could experience molestation and rape. Then they can experience homelessness, for example. And what goes along with that? Being hungry. They could be in abusive relationship where they're bullied. So they can have their life is just like complete hell, you know. So this is like the complex trauma, and it affects the person in all areas. Now, some people can be born into a complex traumatic situation. So let's take a person that's born into poverty, someone that's born into poverty. You know, they're not eating, they don't have the basic necessities in life. They could be born into a wartime situation. You know, these are traumatic events. They can have also being born and their parents they could be put in foster care because what we're beginning to see now is that foster care children that are put into foster care are suffering from traumatic events. They're suffering from traumatic events, being without their parents. And it seems to affect them later on in life where they want to go and look for their parents. They want to find mama. They want, where's, like Where's my mama at? Where's my daddy at? You know, going to jail, being incarcerated. That's a traumatic event. So doing so what happens with this trauma is a person is affected mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally. And then I've also gone on to say that trauma is the fertile condition. The traumatic event is the fertile condition that plants the seeds of the obsessive and the obsessive and compulsive behavior, which makes up addiction. So addiction has to have an environment to grow in, and the environment that the addiction grows in is through traumatic events. You feel me? So moving on with this thing, and I'm trying to get camera savvy here, right? I'm trying to show y'all my camera savviness. So anyway, moving on, we see that first there's the trauma, and then inside the trauma, there comes obsessive and compulsive behavior. But there's something that's happening in between that. And then at some point, and I'm gonna say that at some point, right, I'm gonna start putting up like diagrams on the wall behind me, and I'm gonna start writing stuff down and showing how this is done. But until I can get to that place, I'm gonna be just verbalizing it. So anyway, what happens in between the trauma and obsessive behavior? There's another thing that happens, and what happens is called in between obsessive and compulsive, some feelings begin to develop, and these feelings are resentment, anger, and fear. So inside of the trauma and inside of the obsessive and compulsive behavior is the resentment and the anger and the fear. And these feelings, which are strong emotions, are the ones that develop, and I call this the darkness. What I have just described is the darkness, the person that's growing up in the darkness. Why? Because as a result of trauma, as a result of resentment, anger, and fear, and as a result of obsessive and compulsive behavior, what is being developed? What is being developed? Sure, what's being developed is principles. When you have resentment, anger, and fear, there's going to be some principles that's being developed called deceitful, dishonesty, closed-mindedness, lack of willingness, and with these, a person has developed survival skills. They are what is called in certain arenas. We're developing basically criminals. This is what's being developed. This is the type of behavior that's being. We're developing, and I ain't gonna say we, so I take that back. What's being developed is a person that's antisocial. The skills that they're developing are antisocial. Now let me say, that don't mean that these type of people can be, can go out and get an education or maintain a job. They could be called what's functional. They could be called what's functional. But their symptoms are, here are some of the symptoms: gambling, alcoholism, drug addiction, promiscuous sexual behavior, and perverted activity as a result of resentment, anger, and fear. Overeating, your workaholics, they result in self-righteousness. Now, remember when I was talking about earlier, when I was talking about how the addiction affects the 4 areas, or how trauma and obsession and compulsion, which makes up addiction, affect the 4 areas. And I was talking about mental, and then I said mental is going to be referred to as the intellect. Well, what happens is, in a lot of cases, the individual start rationalizing why they are the way they are. For example, a person that's been abandoned and been put into foster care. In most cases, a lot of these individuals find a reason, to be angry at the world, because they've been abandoned. They have abandonment issues. So they get angry at the world. Or somebody that's been molested or raped. Usually what's happening behind that, what happens with that, molesters tend to molest other people. Hurt people, have a tendency of hurting other people. So moving on is these people are made as a result of their circumstances. In the physical, I said physical, and I talked about the body. In certain arenas, there's a term called pain body. And it's so simple. And what's happening with the pain body is the things that I just talked about, the resentment, the anger, and the fear, and the synonyms that go along with those, results in pain of the body, pain of the spirit, pain mentally, pain emotionally. And what it affects is the person's spirit. And when I say spirit, and I'm just saying me, as when I say spirit, what I'm referring to is not in the religious sense, but in the energy sense. In the energy, a person's energy is affected. And sometimes we can see when a person's energy is affected, they usually walk around dark, and I'm not saying all, but most people, they're very dark people. They have with themselves, they carry a dark aura. They tend to be, I ain't gonna say all, and I'm not saying all, but some people, they tend to be very violent prone. They suffer from drugs, the alcohol, the sex, the gambling. Now I want to say this: not all are. They can be very successful people, or give the or make it seem like this. You can look at them and never think that these people have these issues. Some, but in reality, they're very dark people. I mean, you might see them on the news one day and say, wow, I didn't know he was a bank robber, or I didn't know that was a mass murderer, or I didn't know that was mass murder, and then what's the other one? The person that go around just killing people and stuff like that. So anyway, moving on with this, we're looking at the emotional. And the reason why I say inside their emotions, their devotion, and I use the term devotion. And the reason why that devotion is there is because they're devoted to what they're doing. They're devoted to what they're doing, whether they're living their secret life as a whatever, or their drug and alcoholism, their overeating, their gambling, their obsessive and compulsive. behavior is at play. So then again, what I want to connect this to is the darkness. Now I'm also add in here too that in this mode that I just described, as a result of trauma, the person is cursed. They're cursed. They're living a cursed life. They live in a life inside of darkness. Now I'm gonna say this too. Now they can bring some good. They can bring some good to somebody's life. But on the other side of that, on the flip side of that, they're hurting a lot of people as well as themselves. And some can be even caught up to a point that they so powerless, they don't even want to do the things that they're doing, but they're so caught up that at this point, they can't get out of it. They can't get out of whatever it is that they're doing. Whether it's the drinking, the overeating, the promiscuous sexual behavior, whether it's the gambling or the drugs. I'm scratching my back. The gambling or the drugs, they're sort of locked in, and they're locked in as a result of their feelings and their emotions. They have overpowering feelings and emotions that just won't let them stop whatever it is that they're doing to hurt themselves and others at this particular time in their lives. So let's move on. The principles, and I'm flipping here through my notes. Now I talked about the curse, and let me kind of expand on curse and spells. Curses and spells. A curse and a spell usually are invocations that people use to harm other people. Now, what did I say when I talked about the mental aspect? I said in the mental aspect, in the emotional aspect, it was devotional. So going back to a piece that I talked about when I said hurt people, well, a predator is taking their curse and they're cursing somebody else with it. Now, I'm quite sure it could be called something else, but for this purpose, this is going to be the definition that I use, because remember I talked about earlier about light workers. And one of the points that I want to make early in this piece right here is as hurt people, healed people can heal people. Thus, the light worker is coming forth from a dark place. Because a lot of light workers, and I'm not saying all, come from a dark place. A lot of light workers come from a dark place. And I'm not saying all. So, I'm not saying, all light workers, everybody that's walking around here doing good today, came from a dark place. No. But a lot have. A lot have come from a very dark place. And we call it recovery. They are recovering people. And they came from a dark place. And I'm going to show y'all what I'm eating. I am eating some garlic. Raw garlic. So a lot of y'all ain't got to be in my face tonight. So anyway, moving on. And garlic, is good for the heart. I'm trying to keep my heart up. So anyway, moving on with this, and I'm talking about 12-step recovery through the application of spiritual principles. Now, what has to happen is, and I'm talking about coming from the 12-step perspective, when the individual get defeated by their major symptom, whether it's alcoholism, drug addiction, gambling, promiscuous sex, overeating, workaholics, and those that tend to isolate themselves. What happens is they hit a critical point, and they hit a point that actually their lives start falling apart to a point where they cannot deny that they have this a problem. And the problem, excuse me, usually comes through the symptom or the symptoms. And so what happens is they hit what's called a bottom. And that bottom is a result of the symptom or the symptoms that they were using or doing affected their life so bad that trauma resurfaced again. They had another bout with trauma. And inside that bout with trauma, what has happened is they have come to a crossroads in their lives where they have to make another decision. And they have actually three choices. And inside the three choices is, do they want to live? Do they want to die? Or do they want to just exist? So the trauma has resurfaced only in a different, I don't want to say in a different area, but what I want to say, it resurfaced, however, on a different manifestation. How's that? On a different manifestation. That's how it surfaced. And let's say a person, they could drink so much or use drugs so much or overate themselves to a point where mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally, in all four areas, they suffer a breakdown. They suffer a breakdown where they're forced to look at their situation. They're forced to look at their situation and where they are at that point in time in life. And so they say, okay, I'm going to die or I'm going to change my lifestyle. Now, in some cases, they could experience jails, institutions, dereliction, and death. And usually if it's death, some people ain't coming back. Some people do come back they call it near-death experience. Some people do come back. So moving on, after the person has hit this bottom as a result of the principles that they practice, and I think I wrote some of them down, and let's see if I did. So some of the principles that they practice actually have come back to haunt them. That's what happened. And so they seek those that make the decision that they want to live. What they do is they seek a way out. Now, there's several ways out, but I am going to only refer to the 12-step recovery situation. That's what I'm going to refer to. I'm only referring to 12 steps because that's my experience and that's the only thing I'm talking about right now. So what happens is, as a result of hitting this bottom, as a result of their major symptom, like I said, whether it's drugs or alcohol or promiscuous sex or going to jail, almost losing your life, becoming homeless, the person makes the choice that they want to live. And they might hear about a 12-step program, AA, NA, CA, FA, they hear about a 12-step program, and then they go there, and then as a result, they say, okay, and they meet some people that, in the short story, has suffered their dilemma and found a way out, and they ready to tell them. But however, the condition is you have to stop that symptom. And you realize that the symptom, the underlying symptom, whether it's the sex, the alcohol, the drugs, the food, the consistently working, really overworking, you realize that that's not the problem. That was only a symptom of the bigger problem. But the problem goes back to what? To the resentment, the anger, the fear, and the trauma. And you realize that the dark principles that you were living, you have to switch that around. You have to get rid of those principles and try something new. And usually, people are ready to try something new after they suffer what some of my friends call the ass whooping. Now, some people, not all, some people will actually stay on that road to self-destruction. Yeah, they'll stay on that road to self-destruction. And my battery is getting low. And so staying on that road to self-destruction, what happens is, and if I don't get my battery right, I'm going to lose y'all. So let me find my, there it is. So anyway, I'm about to lose y'all. It says, you might want to plug in. It's in. Oh, I know what I need to do. Here it is right here. Did that. All right, I'm back. Guess who's back? Back again. Man, like I told y'all, man, this stuff is not easy. So anyway, I am going to have to end the stream. I'm gonna end the stream right here. Let me see something. Let me check something out. I really don't want to end it. So let me go over here. Uh-oh. Go. All right, so anyway, I'm back. I lost one of my cameras. And so I'm going to ask y'all to bear with me here. Yeah. So anyway, I'm back, man. So anyway, I forgot what happened. Don't know. But I'm going to kind of keep it going for another few minutes, and then I'm going to put this into another aspect. So anyway, but now y'all know one thing. This is real, you know. So anyway, so moving back to this thing, I'm going to end it right here. I'm going to take this upstairs for 34 minutes. I got 34 minutes. I'm going to look at this, and we're going to see what's happening. But anyway, this particular topic, AANA 12 Steps of Recovery through the application of the 12-step principles of perspective. Now, this is video 2. So anyway, what happens is, like I said, I got to get off.